Let's be real. We all should take a break from alcohol from time to time. It's good for our overall health, but can help with sleep and anxiety. And more sleep, less anxiety are great things. But during those breaks, you may hang out with some friends and want to feel included. Maybe you want a beer with your burger off the grill. Luckily, Athletic Brewing is making non-alcoholic beers that taste just like world-class craft beers. Athletic are brewing styles like IPAs, stouts, sours, and lagers, but all are non-alcoholic. These award-winning, great-tasting beers are also vegan-friendly. There's a reason Athletic is one of the fastest-growing companies, let alone breweries, in the country. You can get Athletic Brewing NA beers delivered right to your door as well. Go to unitedwedrink.com/athletic and start shopping. Grab a sixer of an IPA or one of their limited edition brews that are constantly rotating with new styles. And right now you can get free shipping on any order when you buy 2 6-packs or more. No code needed. Just add 2 to your cart, go to checkout, and there you go. Free shipping. Take a break from alcohol with something that tastes great. Try Athletic Brewing today by going to unitedwedrink.com/athletic. Athletic Brewing. Beer fit for all times. The opinions and statements in this podcast do not represent those of the host's employers, coworkers, family, or imaginary friends. Now enjoy the show.
Happy hour? More like amateur hour. Welcome to United We Drink.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to United We Drink, right here on unitedwedrink.com, as well as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever fine podcasts are found. My name is Mike Urevich, and here I am, all alone on the introduction. You know what that means. That means we have a guest, but you're wrong with that assumption. Don't assume. We actually have 2 guests. Yes, Kevin and I are joined today by Barry Holmes and James Bruner of the Bruery, an offshoot beer company in Orange County, California. The Bruery is a brewery that we both have loved and respected for many, many years. They just celebrated 14 years in business with their 14th anniversary celebration. If you were listening to previous podcast episodes, we mentioned that. And it was a lot of fun to sit down and talk to Barry. He's the CEO of the company. James, he is the director of brewery production over there. And these are 2 guys who really love this business, love this company. And it was interesting to see where they are at in comparison to other breweries. They have their reserve society and their club memberships that they really focus on taking care of those people. And it's going to blow your mind when they say how many brands they have planned for 2023. It's insane. The planning that goes into making so many different, unique, interesting beers. This was such a great conversation. We're so happy to have had these guys on. So sit back, relax, and we hope that you enjoy listening to our conversation with Barry Holmes and James Bruner of the Bruery, an offshoot beer company. All right, we are here with Barry and James from the Bruery. Guys, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy days to come on to the show and talk with us.
Thanks for having us. This is great to be here.
Thanks.
So let's learn a little bit about you guys. Barry, why don't you tell us a little bit about you, your title, how you came about to the brewery, and And yeah, your journey into the beer industry, I guess.
Yeah, no, thanks. The title's technically CEO, but the job description is doing whatever guys like James and the rest of the folks here at the brewery need. So, chief supporter. I came to the brewery in 2018, and so obviously been here since then. Have seen the wild ride that the craft beer industry and the business has been on. I came to the business from completely different background, so other side of the bar until this role, and spent a lot of time in different businesses, basically service businesses, product businesses, nothing to do with beer that's ever paid me until now. And so it's just been a cool experience to, take something that I was really into and now, make it a career.
Yeah, and I know that's something that we definitely want to touch on a little more with you in a bit. James,
Yeah.
you
Go ahead.
yeah, I've looked at your resume, and that one's quite impressive for the beer industry. So tell us a little bit about where you've been and how you got to the brewery and what you're doing there.
Yeah, appreciate it. I've been working in the food and beverage space, if you want to call it that, like restaurants since I was 14 years old. Um, and eventually after college found myself working at a bar that was opening a brewery in Tallahassee, Florida, called Proof. So I was there at Proof Brewing Company in Tallahassee from the start of their production all the way through when they moved to a larger 20 barrel system and moved spaces. At that point, I had a friend living in Georgia who tipped me off to the fact that Terrapin was hiring. So I moved up to Athens, Georgia, you know, sight unseen, moved there the day before I started my job at Terrapin, and brewed there from their rise from 15,000 barrels a year up through about 70,000 barrels a year. Was there about 3.5 years, met my wife there. That took us to Atlanta. I helped start a brewery called Scofflaw there. Um, it was a great experience. I learned a lot to do when you're working in a brewery and a lot what not to do when you're starting a brewery. Um, so very much uh, a good training ground, but I had some differences with the ownership in terms of opinion and morals. And left there, went and started brewing at Sweetwater for about 3 years. Um, and was the lead brewer there, in charge of recipe development, SOP creation, training all the new brewers. That was pretty awesome. I got to create recipes for some of the beers that became flagships almost. G13, the hazy IPA that smelled like weed, that was mine, which was pretty awesome. Um, Mango Kush as well. So I had fun there, but at the same time, the head brewer had been there 26 years, and the head cellarman had been there 18 years, and there was nowhere for me to go. Um, had the brewmaster write me a recommendation letter for grad school. Was the first graduate student under Glenn Fox at UC Davis. Ended up getting my master's degree in food science and tech with a focus on fermentation. I did my thesis on the interactions of hops and yeast during the fermentation of beer. Um, it's out there if you want to read it. If you have time to read 160 pages on beer, probably most people don't really care, but it's fun.
I guarantee you one of my brewers, Ralph, has read that paper because if it says hops in the title of anything, he's read it.
Nice.
I'll have to
Well,
ask him.
that's
And more
awesome.
people should read stuff like that.
Yeah.
Oh, I agree. It was a work of it was a big labor to get that done in the less than 2 years, and get back out into the real world. While in grad school, though, on top of that, I was working packaging at the Budweiser facility up there near Davis, in Fairfield, California. And I also worked quality for a summer at Lagunitas. Uh, After leaving graduate school, I was brought to LA area to help open the Creature Comforts facility here in Los Angeles. Um, and at that time, I had actually turned down the innovation manager job for Barry and the brewery, to go do the job for Creature Comforts, the director of production there.
We are
Uh,
persistent.
yeah. So
You have
about
to be.
a year and a half later, Barry hits me up and says, "Hey, you want to have a beer?" Um,
Which
and
never really means, that's what's great about the industry. You know what I wanted.
yeah, exactly. I mean, I came here expecting something. And yeah, let's see, 3 months later, I am now the director of production here at the Brewery and Offshoot. It's been a wild ride for the first 2 months of me working here, and I'm pretty psyched to be a part of a brand that I have admired and really just loved for over 12 years now. So
So you're just really still getting your feet wet, huh?
I
Only
am
2 months
very much,
in.
yeah, it's pretty impressive too. I mean, we're making 225 different brands in 2022.
Hmm.
So there's just a
That
little bit
that
of
few,
learning
huh?
curve. Yeah.
That few. You guys got to get off your asses and work a little harder. You need at
Yeah.
least 300 brands.
Just a little bit of a learning curve, but I feel like all of my previous experiences has helped me get there quicker. You know, it's been a wild ride, but it's fun. So
Excellent.
So to take in making 250 brands for the year, that must mean that you're drinking something right now to cope with that. What do you have?
I am my until I get home, it's usually IPAs and lagers, but right now I have our treat, which is our monthly release of an offshoot seasonal. This one's a West Coast with Simcoe and Centennial. And then I also have our flagship West Coast IPA from offshoot called Escape. Just doing a little side by side comparison to really get the palate going, see which one I like better. Uh, yeah.
Which one's winning?
Well, right now the treat is gone down quite significantly, and I haven't really dived into
Okay.
the Escape. So, but it's a solid brand, both of them.
Centennial, a hop you don't hear too many people using anymore. That's still a beautiful hop.
I love it.
Yeah.
Do they still use C hops in brewing? I thought everything. I thought those were just passe.
Our West Coast uses Centennial in it. Yeah.
I'm just happy that people are still doing West Coast IPAs because I feel like it seems like a dirty little secret if your beer isn't hazy and doesn't have 7 New Zealand hops in it. But I digress.
Southern California is known for West Coast, so pretty exciting to be back in the land of that. My wife's from San Diego, so we've visited quite a few times since we've been together. And yeah, coming from the East Coast, the West Coast, it's true. The West Coast IPA is not as popular out there on the East Coast, but you know, we'll let it be. I mean, you still have like, is Midwest IPA a thing? Like you have Bell's Two
Two
Hearted,
Hearted.
right?
Yeah.
So, and that's all Centennial. So
Yeah, it's true. So Barry, what are you drinking?
So I have our Rukeller Helles lager, which is relatively new for us. This was of all those brands that we've been doing 200-300 a year. It wasn't until a couple years ago that we launched a lager program, and so for a beer geek oriented brand focused mostly on barrel aged beers, sour beers, things like that. The innovation for us a couple years ago was doing a lager, and it's interesting to see how people will ultimately judge us more for the look and feel of this and the taste of this than some of the stuff we might have been known for years ago. But it's
at
a
the
good one.
same
It's a really
time,
good one.
at the same time, it will never get a 5 on Untapped.
By the way, the fact that Mike and I both have to talk about the beers that we're drinking, and we will because we're drinking brewery beers, you guys both just set me up perfectly for questions I want to ask. So that's unfair that I have to put them in my back pocket. But we should move on to Mike. What are you drinking? You go next.
Well, considering that I know what they're drinking and I know what you're drinking, I feel like I got kicked in the ass because I'm drinking white chocolate. And I split this bottle with my wife because it's nearly 15% beer, and Kevin was very adamant about me having this one. And I've had this beer before in the past, and I loved it. And it's everything that I remember about it. This chock full of chocolate and vanilla flavor in such a like copper colored beer that is just makes your mind go, what the fuck am I drinking?
It's also
I mean,
actually a fairly low ABV for some of our barrel aged stuff.
oh yeah, I know that because the one of the others he offered me was the anniversary beer, and that was what 17. I like, yeah, I'll go with the slightly lower.
Well, Mike, don't worry. If you pass out halfway through this recording, I'll make sure that
You'll
we
know
keep
why.
it going. Yeah, we'll know. Well, listen, it was a blessing and a curse to have you take that beer because I took the Saison and I don't know how to pronounce it. So I'm going to sound like an idiot when I say Juilletistes.
Yeah, it's French. I actually can't pronounce it either, so don't worry about it.
Thank you for validating me. But that is
You
what
have to
I'm
say it
drinking.
with a lot more attitude. I think
Yeah.
that as long as you put some sarcasm in there,
Barry,
it'll
help us out. You
Juilleista. No, that's not it.
Juilleista?
I think you nailed it actually. Just with a little more.
Got a little more mustard on it.
Mhm.
So I'm drinking the Saison. I'm really enjoying it. I love. There's a little bit of funk to it. So many Saisons are all about phenols these days, and they kind of ignore the funkier, more traditional farmhouse aromas because they can be a little off-putting to some. I think it's perfect. It's nice and dry like a Saison should be. It's clean. It would be a great food beer. I mean, I would love to have something like some Thai food or something like that with this right now because it's going to cleanse the palate. It's going to accentuate all the spices that go into it. So I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, it's Brett fermented with our house culture blend of Brett's, and it's perfectly dry. I think, like you said, Bert, it grows great with food. I think that's like the secret weapon of all Belgian and like French beer is that it goes good with food.
Oh yeah.
And I don't know if you know anything about Mike or I, but in our brewery backgrounds, but I actually, one of my breweries is a Belgian inspired brewery. And it's one of the things I lean on. We are a food forward. We do beer dinners all the time, and it's my secret weapon is the fact that my beers are so food forward. So I do want to before we
Barrel
get
of
into our
Monks,
first.
right? Yeah.
What's that?
Barrel of Monks, right? So you're doing a lot of like Belgian stuff you used to at least.
Mostly Belgian stuff, and we do some IPAs and some American styles now. But for the first 6 years of our existence, we did nothing without Belgian yeast and did nothing without European malts and hops. And before we get into our first question, I have to say one of the reasons why is the brewery. One of our inspirations there are two breweries that I would put as American breweries up on kind of the pantheon of what we wanted to be as far as our positioning and our quality, and it was the Bruery and Lost Abbey. Those are the two breweries we looked at and said, "Hey, listen, best case scenario, we can get to that level." And even if you Google search some of our 750 bottles, we've got a die cut shield. I don't want to say we ripped it off because I know you guys have done so many different designs over the years, but that was intentional, I have to say, because we were such a big fans of what the brewery has done and the quality, the consistency, and the styles that you guys have put forward for so many years. And I know, Mike, you're a big fan as well, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, even before I've been in the industry now for over 10 years, and even before that, I was a fan of the brewery. And I mean, some of those early beers, the first times that we got them here, I was wanting to grab everything that I got. I like Saison Roux was probably the first beer that I ever had from them. But I mean, Hottenroth and Autumn Maple, I fell in love with. Autumn Maple was a beer that I went out and grabbed many, many bottles of when it was season for that. and Two Turtle Doves was one of the best beers I ever had in my life for the longest time. And I tried to homebrew one, and it didn't really turn out as well. But I mean, this was
Sounds like we
yeah.
need a beer dinner to follow this up.
We can definitely put something together. I think I would love to do something in that vein. But let me just jump right into this, Barry. You said something when earlier on, and you talked about being a beer geek brewery or beer geek centric. You mentioned the term, and I came into the scene the exact time that the brewery was founded. That's when I got into craft brewing, like pretty seriously, trading stuff, that kind of culture. And for me, being in Florida, not able to get your beers at that time, it was all about beers like Black Tuesday, right? I called them the Three Sisters: Black Tuesday, Kate the Great, and Dark Lord. Those were the beers we wanted to get our hands on. And it was very much the perception that the brewery is a beer geek brewery. Do you consider yourself that was true? And do you consider yourself to still be a beer geek brewery to this day?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that the tastes have obviously changed and morphed, but the focus of what we started doing and then have continued to do is really appeal to our members who definitely are in the beer geek category. Now they run the spectrum from someone who just really appreciates the beer that we have and the tastes and what it what it does for their how interesting they are and how much they like them, all the way to a home brewer who really wants to geek out on how it was made and the barrel character and what kind of hops and what kind of malt and all those things, all those pieces. But I lump that group that's really into the beers themselves and how they were made as beer geeks, and they're the ones that we're appealing to the most, and that probably defines most of the employees as well. So I think if we tried to deviate from that, then it wouldn't we would lose our way.
Hmm.
And
Have you? I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
you guys were one of the first that I recall doing the kind of like society type of thing, like bottle clubs. I had a friend. I have a friend here who was one of the original members, and he lives here. He had a mule that went and like pick or proxy. Sorry, I think that's the proper term. That went and picked up the bottles for him and then shipped them to him. And now it's like it seems like everyone and their mom who wants to be in it brewery does a bottle club of some sort with the same kind of perks that you guys were doing. Like at the time, it seemed like such a revolutionary thing that you were doing. And yeah, I feel like you were on the forefront of that.
Yeah, I think so. The brewery was definitely innovative in that way. But, there's the membership model has kind of permeated a lot of different businesses, and it's really interesting. There are certain companies and industries that try to force it, but here it really makes a lot of sense because most of these beers take a year plus to make. The people who want to drink beers like this, they have to be beer geeks. They have to really understand and appreciate all those nuances. And then you can see how the communities develop, and that's what a membership really does. Is it develops a community, and yeah, the justification is you pay a certain amount and you get a certain amount of beers, but then you get benefits and you get exclusivity and all those things. But it's the events that they get to participate in together with our team. That's what really brings it together, and I think that's why that's why a membership really works in this type of business.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely were on the forefront of it, and I think half the breweries that I talked to at our anniversary festival recently said they based their model on us. It's kind of crazy. I think it's still a huge portion of our business, but I mean, at the same time, the culture has changed. I mean, you guys are aware of that. Like, there's not a line culture as much anymore. Like,
Hmm.
people aren't lining up to get the next cool thing. Um, so it leaves us making a lot of, like we said, 225 different beers. And we try and be as creative as possible. And it brings in not just like how the brewery was started on like the Belgian inspired with California tastes. I mean, we're doing like cocktail inspired, culinary inspired, pastry inspired, all kinds of different, you know, combinations of ingredients based on our base beer. So, I mean, you talked about some of the earlier beers like Autumn Maple and trying to get that. Do you guys remember White Oak?
Oh yeah.
Very much so, yeah.
So like to get to white chocolate, which you're drinking now, it's a riff on the original White Oak.
Mm.
We barrel aged it in a bourbon barrel for a year and a half. Then we call it White Oak Sap, and then we add in cocoa nibs and vanilla, and now we have white chocolate.
Hmm.
And
So
that was actually a question that I wanted to propose with over 200 brands. How much of that is like the moment you knock out or that you go into barrels, you know what it's going to be? Or how much is then, all right, as this barrel's coming along or these groups of barrels are coming along, all right, these are going to be, let's try this with that, try that with it. Like a batch of 20 barrels of beer that went into multiple different barrels gets split into maybe 3 different brands. How much of that is going on, or is there a plan? There's always a plan.
yeah, I mean we're actually finalizing our line plan, which is all of our beers for next year right
Oh,
now. That's yeah, we plan everything out that much. That being said, right, we still have some room for some creativity in the pilot system, and that's something that I want to bring back a little bit more that's been lacking in the recent years. I think we've been putting more into bottling and canning things, and I think we should bring more back to draft exclusivity to kind of like bring some people in the door. Um, we've been talking to members a lot lately, and they all kind of have this like laissez-faire, like, oh well, I don't need to come because I can just buy a bottle. Which I think is great. I think we're still going to offer plenty of fun one-off beers for them, but I think bringing in pilot draft only stuff, and those are the kind of ones where we are just kind of like riffing and playing, and from the brew house on, it's something special and unique. That being said, I mean, we're still doing beers that are special and unique from the brew house too. You mentioned Black Tuesday. That was the original barrel aged stout that the brewery did. Um, it's a behemoth, but it also finishes kind of low in gravity, like 2 Plato. So there's like
oh,
zero.
really? Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize
Like,
it finished that low.
yeah. So there's like zero residual sugar, right? Um, and over the course of the years in the beer industry, we've seen it. People kind of want thicker, more viscous stouts. They want that like syrup in a glass. So we have started to make other base stouts that we can kind of blend to get to those unique products. All in total, we have 4 different ones right now, working on a fifth and a sixth piloting for next year's brands. So it's pretty impressive.
How
So,
big
so
is
you
your pilot?
It's a 3.5 barrel, so it's a small little pilot system, but we have 11 fermenters for it, which is pretty awesome.
Oh, shit.
so you mentioned a couple things about the line culture, and also talked about how the tastes have changed, which is such a big part of what I wanted to ask you guys about, because Mike and I, between the two of us, we've got somewhere in the neighborhood 20, 25 years of brewery experience. We've all been a part of at least 4 different breweries, from the nano tiniest brewery up to, 3, 4,000 barrels, right? But nothing above. So we know how we've had to kind of shift focus over the years, from the time when we'd put out a small batch beer of 12 cases and have people camping overnight, to now, as we said, there's so many options, so much variety that we're not seeing that. Um, when you're planning your special beers, because we've seen this where volume dictates to some people how good the beer is, which kills me, and I want to scream at the top of my lungs about that pretty much every day of my life. But when you're doing that next special beer, are you looking at the volume and saying, hey, if we do too much of this, it's going to get out to people and we're going to drop below a 4 on Untapped, and that's going to be death for this brand. Is it on your radar? Are you thinking about that at all?
I would say, I mean, we really don't try to manipulate it in such a way that we're pushing up the hype. Maybe we should, but we look at, and because we focus most on the members, and we say, how much are they likely to want of this, and then we make it to that. It's a pretty straightforward. And while we obviously look at the Untapped scores in as objective a way as possible, just to see, adjusted for style or whatever you would expect, how did they like it? But we don't want to make a beer that's trying to push that score up. The scores are fairly high as they are, and we're really proud of that. But we don't want to, we don't really try to manipulate it in any other way than just make a great beer and see how it goes.
At the same time,
when you mentioned Untapped there, I feel like your eyes almost went through your ceiling. It's that love-hate thing about that app.
Yeah,
well, it's the sword, right? You live by it, you die by it.
Yeah.
You got to take it with a grain of salt. It's important, but if you focus too much on it, you're missing the point. It's going to put
you down.
Yeah.
James, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the same time, like, we are intrinsically aware of that scarcity thing. I mean, we make enough Black Tuesday now that if you want it, you can get your hands on it. And the same with some of our beers, like the anniversary beer. But there's some of these that just are cost prohibitive to make huge amounts. Like we just did one called Vanilla Villain Reserve. Got 17 different types of vanilla in it, and it's double barrel aged. And one of them is like a rum barrel, one of them is a bourbon barrel. It's just the amount of ingredients. If we made as much of that as we did a Black Tuesday, it would be kind of insane.
Right.
So
I don't want to belabor this too much, but we have talked a little bit about Untapped, and I just found something before we went on for the podcast, because I was poking around. I was looking at some of the beers that you sent over to us, and I'm looking at your Saison, and I'm looking at this as a 3.71 on Untapped, right? And then I said, well, let me what is Saison DuPont right now, which I think is still one of the greatest Saisons made, hands down, period, end of story, is a 3.71. And it just baffles me that anyone's going to drink that beer and not give it a 4 at least. I'm one of those crazy people that when I judge beers, I judge them to style. So I believe there is a 5 for a Saison and a 5 for a Pale Ale and a 5 for a Kolsch. Call me crazy. But when I had to throw that out there so you guys to get some opinions on that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that there's a 5 to every style. I personally, on Untapped, I give everything a 5 because I want to break the algorithm.
Okay.
Go. Do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's absurd. I mean, you point out that one in particular, like there's just certain styles. I mean, like I'm sure if you looked up our Helles, it's got a decent rating for a Helles, but I don't know. There's got to be some kind of way to rank it based on like not even rank it, just like pull the ratings up based on a sliding scale of how that style works. I don't know how. So if you guys
I think the only thing if you guys think about it, that's really all you can do is look for the adjustment and realize, okay, people, it's going to get judged a certain way. So you take those two beers, you know how good one of them is, and they both have the same score. People don't do the things we know they should do, but you compare it to other like styles, and you know that maybe a 3.71 is someone else's 4.1. Just depends on how the public's going to do it.
It just breaks my heart, and now I'll mention this from my own brewery's perspective. When I don't do anything anymore, I'm director of operations. I haven't brewed a batch of beer in 5 years. When my guys brew a great batch of beer, and it's of a very straightforward, non-hype style, and I'm just blown away and think this is one of the best beers we've ever made, and then it just gets the literal meh on rating sites, it just kills me. And I look at those scores and I get frustrated. And then I run into roadblocks for certain outlets where they go, well, listen, this beer sounds great. And we tried it. It's amazing, but it has a 3.9 and we need to be a 4.1 on Untapped to buy this beer from you. And I just throw up my hands and say, I don't want to live on this planet anymore. But I'm glad you guys were able to talk a little bit about that and get your perspective, because from your position, and how many barrels is the brewery doing on a yearly basis now?
Around 18,000.
So it makes me happy that our frustrations are being shared up and down the spectrum of production levels. That makes me feel like there's some kindred spirits out there.
Yeah, no, it's terrible. And my favorite is always, I'm sure you guys have run into this too. It's like, I don't like hops, West Coast IPA, 1 star.
Yep.
It would
Don't
be the
like
same.
sour beers, 1 star.
Yeah.
I always say, if you don't like Thai food, don't go into a Thai restaurant and rate it. Right? Just stay away from it. It's not necessary. So switching gears a little bit.
Real quick, I have an idea.
Real quick.
All people who sign up for Untapped have to pass BJCP within a month of having their account, or they get deactivated. Yep, that might be a thing.
BJCP,
Maybe.
Wants their own something. Yeah.
Well, they could create a subset of that group. What's the ranking among? It's kind of like Rotten Tomatoes, right? What's the general public think versus the critics?
I mean, there's rating sites out there where there is like a cost, well, not like a cost of entry, but like minimum character requirements and minimum word requirements, so people actually have to objectively think about beers. But then you just run into the crazy super nerd that is just gonna, like, I don't know. I mean, that's like the beer advocate, rate beer, right? They're better systems in because they make you actually talk about the beer, but there's less people on them and it's a more centered audience. So like there's a give and take, right? Like that's the beauty of Untapped, is that it's open to so many people, and like there's like literally no learning curve to entry. But then you also have you have the motherfucker that's like Bud Light 5 stars. This like well done, like Pilsner Urquell 1 star. So
yeah, I'm right there with you. There's no perfect system for any of these things. And what we have to do, I think, is just reflect and say, are we making good beer? Are we proud of what we're putting out? And the people that we're talking to, people in the industry, people, fans of ours that are really analyzing these things, are we serving them well? And I think it's really important to not take these things too far. And I'm glad to hear it from you guys. I wanted to switch gears a little bit because we talked a little bit earlier about the fact of how the brewery has to evolve, right? And you're still serving that beer geek culture. You're still making all these different brands. You're still kind of pushing the envelope. And then you have something like Offshoot, which is complementing your portfolio, I would imagine. And when you start a project like that, is that designed to bring in a drinker to your brands that isn't there before? Or is that like, hey, Steve at the end of the bar, I know it's not this small, but Steve at the end of the bar really wants a New England double IPA and we don't make one. So we're not going to do it at the brewery. We'll make something else for him.
it wasn't Steve at the end of the bar. It was literally our brewers wanting to drink an IPA. And, we had a pilot system. So we started brewing some. They weren't originally meant to go to the public. They were just going to be served, in the kegerator, in the break room and stuff like that. But they were so good that, it was an offshoot of the brewery. We said, why not give them to the public too? We can make a barrel aged stout with vanilla and cocoa nibs. Well, let's show the public that we can make a hazy IPA, with Amarillo and Citra as well. So I think I don't necessarily think that it was like us bending to the market as much as we just kind of wanted to make it. Obviously, the production volume has gone up significantly, and that's because of market. People want it, which is I mean, I'm sure you guys are aware of that too. How much of your blend is Belgian versus IPA now?
In the tap room, because we don't do a lot of distribution of it, it's our IPA is a number 1 or number 2, number 3 beer every time we have it on, and there's 11 Belgians fighting against it, and it still rises to the top.
So, I mean, we have 40 beers on tap in the tasting room, generally, and I still think I think our biggest seller is Relax, which is our hazy IPA. So,
Excellent.
Yeah, I mean, where I'm at, we focus a lot on lagers, and we have 2 West Coast style IPAs pretty much in our portfolio. But when we don't have a hazy IPA on, people ask like, "Hey, where's a hazy?" Like, we'll get to one. You know, it's not our main thing that we do here. Like, okay, yeah. But think about it. Think about it. Like,
yeah, I think that's how the lager series was kind of created too. The Rukeller was kind of like, we need something to clear the palate in between these rippers, right? Let's brew something that's clean and sessionable to kind of like reset in between. Because for a while it was mischief, right? It was like, what's this 8.5% Belgian dry hopped beer? That's the one that you're going to drink in between the 14% and 18% stouts.
Well, I mean, it is a slightly lower, so yeah,
A light beer for us.
logical.
It was
math.
at the time, yeah.
Math.
Used to be.
So,
Well,
I do like that we have some sours in between that are about 6% too. So I don't what I think Julia Teese was in the lower range.
this is looking at, I think, 7.3.
Yeah.
For us, that's low.
I mean, I remember back in the day, Hottenroth, I think that was 4.5, somewhere around there.
And it was wonderful.
And just I'm speaking very specific, but Kevin and I used to go to a beer bar by our place called Coffee District, and I would buy a bottle of that, sit outside on the patio, and just drink that in the summer heat, and it was glorious.
I think that's the beauty of the sours in general, and I think that's why for a while everyone in the industry thought that they were going to be the next big thing because they're like great warm weather beers. They're refreshing as fuck, and they just like they hit that spot when it's hot outside and you've sweat too much, and it's like, yeah. I mean, I lived in Florida for 22 years of my life too. I am very aware of the climate there. I was born in Miami, so it's it's a rough time. Even on Christmas, I remember Christmases growing up that were like 85 degrees and 100%
Yeah.
humidity out.
Well, we had to get a Florida connection in this somehow. I mean, we're talking to 2 guys from the brewery about as far away from Florida as you can get, and we still have some kind of Florida connection.
Well, I brought up the beer dinner because my in-laws live in Jupiter, so I'll be there for Christmas. And if you can help me with an excuse to come down, that'd be great.
We'd love to have you. You know, obviously Mike's at Copper Point Brewing in Boynton. I have Barrel of Monks Brewing in Boca, and then we have a wild ale brewery called Odd Breed in Pompano, which is all wild mixed fermentation, all real fruits. I mean, I think you guys would adore that brewery and the kind of very small boutique beers that come out of it. So we'd love to host you and have you down. I'm really excited when I hear about brewers kind of driving this and saying, we want to drink this. And I'm really excited to hear about lagers. And I've always loved the production that comes out of Copper Point, Mike's brewery, because it's always to style. They're always well attenuated. They're always drinkable. And it is amazing when you mention these sour beers that we thought was going to be the next thing. From inside the industry, we always want the next thing to be something that we love and that's technically sound and that is hard to brew. And it almost always ends up being over the top, under attenuated, just throw every single thing you can possibly think of at it. And that's the next big thing. It's a little frustrating. I wanted to know from you guys, because especially James, you've been in the industry for so long, and obviously Barry, we'll talk about that as well for you. Like, What have you seen as the way this has kind of evolved, and what's one good thing or one bad thing that has happened in our industry in the time you've been in it?
I love that, you know, like you said, brewers are making beer to style now. But it's a niche market, right? I think there's some people definitely, piping the glory of lager, but I don't think craft lager is ever gonna win that game. But hopefully, I would love it if Hellas became our number one brand, honestly. In general in the industry, like over the course of my time, I kind of mentioned it a little bit, like there was this crazy hype on a lot of beer. Um, when I started in the industry, there was 2,000 breweries, right? And now there's over 10,000. And a lot of that growth, the explosive growth in like the early, the 2010s was from these hype breweries like Treehouse and Other Half and Trillium and all these guys making hazy IPAs and selling it all out of their tasting room. I'm kind of glad that doesn't exist anymore. People lining up to buy 4 packs of $25 hazy IPAs, I think is fucking
That
ridiculous.
couldn't sustain.
That sometimes explode.
Yeah, right. Well, that's the overfruited sours, and I mean that's where we're at now. Like, they're still sometimes going to explode, and not to say that we don't make overfruited sours now. We have a series called Brucicle that is literally a smoothie sour. But hey, we're using foeder aged imperial like wild mixed fermentation beer to as the base with our fruited sour, and then guess what? We're pasteurizing so that it doesn't blow up in the can.
We appreciate that.
It's
Yeah.
it's like it's a novel thing. I think that, I mean, you saw it in the 90s, right? Where all these people kind of got into brewing as a cash grab during the microbrew culture, and it kind of like reset itself. I think I think we might be in the early throes of another reset. Um, COVID, all the money from the government with COVID kind of like helped people survive a little bit longer. But I think that all the people that are still kind of, unproven, they have no idea what the hell they're doing when it comes to brewing, are gonna start to suffer. Um, but hell, I don't know either, because back to the untapped thing. So
Barry, what have you seen? You've only been in the industry, properly for about 4 years now, right? So, from your position as CEO and kind of looking down and like a bigger perspective, is there anything that you've seen that is trending in the wrong direction, in your opinion?
I mean, it's hard to say whether any of the trends are right or wrong. They just are what they are.
Well, just
You
in your
know,
opinion. I mean, I'm asking you to kind of like take it, personally, and you don't have to, obviously, but I'm just wondering.
yeah. I mean, I would just, it's about perspective, and I think that tastes are shifting. There's a bunch of macro trends out there, and James referenced it earlier. There was a period where the actual craft growth was higher than the number of breweries that were coming on. Now it's the other way around. And so when the number of breweries are growing 5 or 10%, but the total market's growing 20-25, well, we're at the other end of the spectrum now. We've created there's a lot of people now who have worked at places like the Bruery, or worked at other great breweries. They've learned, and they've gone on and done their own thing. So you go from 7, 8, 9, now 10,000 breweries, whereas the total market isn't growing. So that's making things more competitive, but at the same time, it should be making things more innovative. And that's where we go back to, we give ourselves a license to brew to style if we feel like it, but not brew to style. We brew to taste. And if we say we want to make this beer taste a certain way, we want to make it compatible with certain types of food, then we'll take that license and do it. It gives us the ability to be creative and break the rules. But then you go back to the beer that I just finished, Rukeller Hellas. We try to make that as true to style as possible. And I think the trends are, if there's anything good, it's that competitive spirit is going to push people to figure out what other people are going to want to drink and how to and how to surprise them with something that they hadn't thought of.
There's a great podcast out there. It's not yours. I'm sorry, guys.
Oh, we're not a great podcast.
Yeah.
I see how it is.
End it,
Great
end
one, but
it.
it's not.
with Peter Burkhardt, the ex brewmaster.
Okay. That's yeah. He's good.
And he like opines on like why styles should be completely destroyed. And to a certain, like, he got me on board there for a second. I was like, holy shit, this guy's onto it. Like, styles are dumb. Like, why do we brew to style? But then there's things like, I want to walk into a bar and I want to know, like, oh, that's a Helles. I know what that should taste like.
Yeah.
That's a Belgian table beer. I should know what that should taste like. So there's give and take on both ends of it.
Well, oftentimes on this show, I end up playing devil's advocate because I think it's important to present both sides of an argument. And I think it's important as a brewer to be able to live in both worlds. I just had a conversation with someone where I went off about how all I want is dry Irish stouts going forward. I want low gravity, roasty, well-made Irish stouts. And right now in the fermenter at my brewery is a 12% sweet cinnamon vanilla coconut stout. I can like both things. I can feel like one works for this and one works for this. And my frustration always comes down to, if you don't like this side of it, that's fine, but don't pretend like it's bad, right? And I think it goes the other way. And we are definitely, we take pot shots at some of those styles that we think are a little bit easier to make, because quite honestly, this Imperial Stout that we're making, probably one of the easier beers we got in fermentation right now. It's certainly easier to make than our single, our Belgian single. But I think it's a healthy perspective that you guys both have to be able to look at both sides of that coin and make a great Helles and make a great over-the-top fruited sour, because there's room for it all to work as long as they're all being done with care and thought.
100% agree.
Yeah. I agree with that, because I feel like there's too many people who are out there today trying to just make what is hip and what is hot without any care into the nuance of the traditional and the standard stuff, where it seems like the brewery has been they started on the standard and the traditional, put themselves and branched themselves into the experimental, and was able to keep both going at the same time. Like all those, because I do see the pastry stout cans, the smoothie sour cans, but still doing 750s of foeder aged sours, and now doing lagers. I haven't had a lager, but I'm going to assume that you guys know what you're doing when it comes to that, and you have care for tradition and style guidelines for some of those things. What you do with a barrel-aged imperial stout is your prerogative, but like, and there's no real style guideline for that. Who, like, you want to throw chocolate, vanilla, coconut, whatever into that and make a food-oriented beer? Awesome.
But it's funny. It's funny you say like the brewery started on like the two style crazy stuff, because it's always been like taste over style. Even the two turtle doves that you talked about.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's a Belgian double, but it also has like toasted pecans and cocoa nibs in it. Like that was weird 15 years ago. No, not 15. What? I guess it was 14 years ago when that was first made. So like it's I think there's room for both.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's
It's
the
respecting
beauty.
both sides.
Well,
That's the beauty of
yeah.
beer and the beauty of like having so many different tastes out there. I mean,
because
I
really,
don't.
we
Yeah,
look
I
at it
don't.
as you are, even the style is just shorthand for taste. Because
Yeah.
you order the style. It's just because you don't have the time or the memory to say exactly what it was supposed to taste like. You just know that the Pilsner is supposed to taste like this. The Helles is supposed to taste like this. And so then some of those beers we have to do true to style because that's the taste we're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
That's why there's BJCP guidelines. I mean, that's
So, Barry, there was one question that I wanted to ask you from earlier on, and Mike talked about that in the open, or in our open of this conversation, I should say. And it's about your kind of where you came from pre-craft beer. When you got into this industry, did you say, wow, was it a rude awakening when you came from your previous positions in places like PepsiCo and L'Oreal? And did you say, what the hell did I get myself into?
Basically, of course, I mean, there's at the same time, there are a host of great things in the industry and in this company that I didn't anticipate, and there's just so much passion and so much interest in not just the beers themselves, but it's what the beers allow for and represent. It's the conversation starters, it's what it does for relationships and the community part of it. You don't really think about it until you get into it, and that's there's so many. It's like any profession. There's going to be frustrations. There's going to be challenges. And look, in the post-COVID world that we're in, with business is tough, costs out of control, and the lingering effects of all the lockdowns and all those things, and then you add in normal competitive pressures like changing tastes that we've seen more from seltzers into RTDs and how that affects retailers and distributors. So there's more there are more challenges than you can shake a stick at, but it all comes back to that previous piece, which is the community and what those beers represent. That's what's really cool about what we do, or at least we think so. Is the core of our business is the membership, and the fact that one of those 225 beers may not be much. Somebody might give it a 3.5 on Untappd. Somebody else might be the reason that they have that next conversation with their dad, and we don't. It's fine that it's that somebody else gave it a 3.5. But if we find them, we'll kill them. That's
cut the interview.
How this podcast works.
That's how we go out. No, I love that, and we really appreciated having you guys on. Mike, do you think we're in the position to go to last call? What are you thinking?
We have one more question.
Oh, that's right.
This is a question we did not preface you on because we prefer a more real response to it. So, you guys just celebrated your 14th anniversary, correct?
Yes.
You had a big event. You had tons of people out. The whole event was a success. You're hungry though, and the bell is calling to you. I'm talking about Taco Bell.
Taco Bell, of course.
What is your order at Taco Bell when you're going to that drive-through?
At 2:00 in the morning after not eating after your anniversary party.
I hope that you guys also saw that we made a beer called Baja Blitz.
No, I didn't see that.
I did see that, yeah.
And it's one of those over-fruited sours that is based on Baja Blast. We put some spirulina algae in there even to make it green. It's pretty ridiculous.
You can't come up with a topic that doesn't directly relate to one of our beers. If there's 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, there's 1 degree of Bruery beers.
Not when you're doing 250 or whatever it is every year, I can imagine.
Yeah.
But you guys aren't getting onto the question. What is your Taco Bell order?
I haven't been, I'll admit I haven't been in a while, but I'm going Mexi Melt. Do they still make those? Because
I don't know if they still make them,
2
but
or
that
3
is a
Mexi
classic item.
Yeah.
I'm probably
I'll be
showing
honest
my
with
age,
you.
but
We ask this question all the time. I haven't been to Taco Bell
every
in 7
guest.
years. But
yeah.
So don't feel bad. Mexi Melt's a great answer.
There's irony that, like Barry says, he hasn't been in a long time. My wife was craving Taco Bell literally this last weekend. I don't know why. It was random AF because we live in the land of wonderful tacos down here in Southern California.
Mm-hmm.
And she's even from San Diego, where the burritos are even better. But we ended up at Taco Bell. I got a quesarito. I had never tried that before, but it was interesting. It's literally like a quesadilla that is the shell of a burrito.
Hey,
And
I mean, James, congratulations on the birth of your first
surviving
child
it.
coming in
Yeah.
9 months.
That
It
was
was
a secret menu item at Chipotle for a while that you could
really
they would make a quesadilla and then make the burrito with the quesadilla and they called it a quesarito.
Well, fast food these days are nothing about everything it is stuffing one thing into another thing. It's
That's
just
exactly it.
how can we make this with this? Because we've already got the ingredients and it'll be cheaper. Food cost
Didn't
is
Taco
important.
Bell put Fritos on something too? They had some
Yeah.
burrito with Frito.
they got a taco with the Dorito as a shell too. So
Yeah.
We're living in The Simpsons, by the way.
Skittlebrow. Have you guys done Skittlebrow?
we
That's a
have not
Simpsons
done it.
thing.
No.
Well, that's
Sounds
one
like
thing
it
one of
would
us
be a
can
beer.
do. Yeah.
I feel like
Um,
we have beers that are the flavors of Skittles. I mean, it's literally just fruited, sour, light. I mean, Duff was a light lager, presumably, if we're gonna go that far.
So then the last thing that we leave off on is what we call last calls, and this is the point where we give uh, our guests an opportunity to voice their opinion, statement, or whatever about whatever they want, unopposed, unobjected, and no specific amount of time. So you can just kind of you can plug stuff. You can just say, "Hey, I really enjoy this right now," like a TV show, movie, or if you want to go down the bandstand, go for it. That's what we allow you to do here. So, for that, James, what's your last call?
Oh man, I was hoping you would go Barry first because I've had like four different things going through my mind all day, but I'm gonna go with the I don't like seeing bands come back for reunion tours. Um, you know, I think in the end it's a fucking cash grab and I don't appreciate it. One of my favorite bands of all time, the Mars Volta, is coming back after 12 years of not making music. And I'm I'm I was excited at first, but then like, oh, it's sold out in like 5 minutes, and then they added another date, and then it sold out in 10 minutes, and then they added another date, and it sold out in like 6 minutes. I don't know. To me, I feel like if you're gonna move on creatively, you should just move on creatively. That's my last call. I will stand on that.
That's a good one,
Well done.
Barry.
Let's see. God, I'd forgotten about this one. I would, I will have to shamelessly talk about that. We are going to open up our Reserve Society membership next month, so we're excited about that. That's the fuel for the business. That's what keeps the creativity going. It's what allows us to do all those beers and express the way we are. So that's the shameless part of it. I'd say that if I had to think of the last call, I can't wait for the follow-up season of Winning Time, like anyone's business. Has anyone seen this? It's the
I'm not familiar.
Okay, so it starts with the 1980 season, the NBA season following the Lakers around, and Magic
Is this
Johnson, Jerry West. I watched it thinking it's just going to be background noise, and then by the end of the season, I feel like they could do 10 different seasons of this, and it'd be riveting. It's just amazing.
I've been meaning to watch that.
If you're a basketball fan who enjoyed 80s style, early 90s style basketball, it's incredible. It's a little controversial. Jerry West, I think, was suing them. There's a lot of people hated it, but I loved it.
That's right in my wheelhouse because that's when my Pistons were actually good. So I appreciate 80s basketball.
I think my Sixers are involved in that show.
They are.
as
They
well.
obviously lost in the finals when Kareem went down and Magic played center and scored 42.
Yeah.
But Isaiah from the Pistons doesn't come off so great.
Listen, I'm from Detroit. We love the guy. He was always kind of a prick. I was more of a Joe Dumars fan.
No, Joe Dumars is great. And Vinny the microwave, what a great nickname. You come off the bench, scored 15 in a few minutes.
The microwave, yeah. Didn't think we were going to get into this, but I'm happy. I'm happy we're here.
Well, it's a full circle. You take, you bring your Taco Bell home, you put it in the microwave, you're done.
Put on some old 80s
Make sure
basketball.
it's boiling hot and burns your mouth, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin, you want to throw one out there?
I'm going to go TV too. My wife and I just watched the entire first season of Only Murders in the Building, the Steve Martin, Martin Short. I think it's on Hulu. It is one of the most brilliant things I've watched in a very long time. It is just goddamn funny. It's sharp. It's well written. Steve Martin is one of my comedy heroes. I mean, I remember listening to Wild and Crazy Guy on an album growing up that my dad had and just being blown away. And the fact that hasn't done much in the space of comedy in so long, and to be part of the writing and the creation of this show it makes so much sense. Because I mean, I read The Pleasure of My Company and Shop Girl, both of his novellas. The guy is brilliant. I'm so happy that him and Martin Short are doing this after not seeing them a lot recently. And if you haven't had it, if you haven't watched it, it is brilliant. I haven't gotten to the second season yet. I'm expecting great things. No one spoil it for me. I love the twists and turns of it. And I just got out of Better Call Saul, which was one of the greatest TV shows of all time. And I rolled right into one of the greatest comedies I've seen in forever. We're in the renaissance of TV. It's just all brilliance all the time. There's too much to talk about, and this is one that deserves highlighting.
I mean, it's better than movies just rehashing themselves all the fucking times.
100%.
Yeah. I just want to throw out a quick. It's funny that James mentioned about bands reuniting, because one of the bands, my favorite band of all time, is a band called Botch, who were the early tech metal, post rock, whatever you want to call them, bands from Seattle in the 90s. And their former bassist, Brian Cook's current band, Russian Circles, just put out a new album. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Gnosis. It's fucking fantastic. If you like heavy, drudgy, no lyrics, but just like great background music for being angry or happy, I don't know. I've always just loved Russian Circles for being good background music. It's fucking fantastic. I think it's one of their best albums that they've put out. And he threw out some hints that Botch might be reuniting, and I don't know how I feel about that either, but I'd prefer an album over a tour, because I don't know if I can go to a show at my age anymore, but who knows?
Yeah, my wife and I find ourselves leaving shows at like 9:30, 10 p.m. because we're like,
yeah.
Damn it, we need to be at work the next day. This is terrible.
Yeah. I have almost 10-month-old twin boys now, and that means my nightlife is dead. So just put out an album. I'm good with that. If Mars Volta, I know they put out a new song recently, but I haven't listened to it. Yeah.
They're different. They're like kind of like the in between of the last Mars Volta album and the Anti-Mask thing that came afterwards. It's interesting. I don't quite put them on the same level as the Mars Volta, but it is interesting that you mention Russian Circles, because that was Spotify's Russian Circles Radio was the soundtrack to my 160-page thesis. So,
oh shit.
That's
Awesome.
how I wrote it.
So,
All right.
Barry, just so you know, I have no idea what these guys are talking about, and I think they should have a spin-off podcast where they just talk about bands they like.
Well, no offense, James. I'm going to opt for listening to Russian Circles versus going and reading out all of the details of the 150 page. I'm just glad you wrote it though, because that part's important.
Yeah. Some people have read it, at least 4 people, the people that are signed off on it at the beginning.
That's important.
Yeah.
You have proof.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, guys, for taking some time out of your day to come and talk to a couple guys over on the East Coast about beer, about what you guys are doing out there. And it's a really interesting. I feel like I could talk about this, especially the membership thing, for quite a while. But I'm so happy that we were able to put this all together and have a talk about it.
No, thanks for having us. It was really cool, and hopefully we'll do this in person at some point.
It's
Yeah,
been great.
especially with Florida connections going on here.
Yeah, I mean, those,
we need to make it
those
down.
in-laws aren't going to get away from themselves. I've got to come down.
We really appreciate it, guys. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks so much.
Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks a lot.
One more time, a big thanks to Barry and James for coming on the show. It was a lot of fun. If you want to learn more about the brewery, find out maybe if you can join one of their memberships or get beer shipped to them. They ship beer to a handful of states. Go over to their website, thebruery.com. That is TheBruery.com. And you can find out about the brewery and offshoot, their offshoot brands that deal in IPAs. If you want to follow the show, you know where to find us on UnitedWeDrink.com, our website, as well as on social media. We are at United We Drink on Twitter and United We Drink Pod on Instagram. We're also on Facebook. You can listen to this show in one of many different wonderful fashions, such as our website, but we're also on all of the major podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts. I think I said that. I don't remember. But go to any of those services where you enjoy listening to podcasts and find the show, subscribe to it. Therefore, we will have brand new episodes delivered to the device of your choice every other Thursday, free of charge. We don't charge anything for this show, but if you would like to support the show financially, you can go to our website, UnitedWeDrink.com, go to the Brands We Love page, and you can visit any of those different sponsors, affiliates, brands that we really enjoy, such as Made in Athletic Brewing, Liquid Death, who I'm always supporting. Go to them, click on those links. Anytime you order something through those links, we get a little bit of a kickback, and that helps us pay for our hosting. That's all that we use this for. We don't make any money off of this show. This isn't a means of income for us. We just throw it towards our hosting so that I don't have to go to Kevin and be like, "Hey man, send me some money for hosting this month." I don't like doing that. He doesn't like sending me money. So doing that helps support this show and just keeps us going, keeps us on the air, and it really means a lot to us. You can also buy a shirt, sticker, button, anything that we offer on our web store, UnitedWeDrink.com/store. We'll be back in a couple weeks with a brand new episode. We hope that you enjoyed this one. And if you're brand new to us, we hope that you come back. Check out the back catalog of shows. We have some really fun ones out there. And other than that, we'll see you in a couple weeks. Cheers, everyone.